our disciplinary culture. We're not concerned about our own rights. We are more concerned with controlling other people's behavior. We will sacrifice our freedom so long as we get other people to do what we want them to do. It's the whole states' rights thing. Why that, the Republicans talk a big game about states' rights. But the moment the state does something that they disagree with, it's no, we can't have states' rights. Just listen to Rick Santorum. Santorum fears states' rights ultimately because he doesn't want to see states exist that allow gay marriage or abortion. What they're really about is it's really more of a social control moral issue with the Republicans on states' rights. We only want states' rights when it protects the moral vision that we see. As soon as a state does something different from our moral perspective, we want to stop it, which is absolutely absurd. At least the Democrats on the other side just flat out say, no, we don't believe in states' rights. Which is bad. I mean, it's a much worse position to not believe in states' rights. But at least they're honest about it. As you see with Obama's DEA thugs busting legal businesses in states where medicinal marijuana is legal. Okay? And they're ignoring state law. They're as if the DEA did not have enough to do already, considering all the shit that they do that they shouldn't be doing anyways. They're going to go in and throw a fit about a state deciding that, hey, that federal law is stupid. That's, I don't know how we got to that point where we decided that it was more important to control what people did in other states than to have freedom to choose, at least in states. Ultimately, ultimately, if it was up to me, it would come down to individuals on everything. But if you're going to have some form of governmental social control, the more local it is, the better, in my opinion, because at least there it affects the people that are making the decision, and people in another state don't have a say over it. Like Iowa. Iowa's fine. I'm not sure if they passed civil unions. I'm pretty sure they allow gay marriage. Why should that bother anyone in the state of Mississippi or Georgia or whatever? It makes no sense. It doesn't personally affect them. It's all about controlling other people's behavior, which goes to show that we're a disciplinary state of America. We are the united disciplinary state of America. And if you look at the way things are going, that's what we're working towards. Eventually, what was the United States will be one state, or at least, this is not something that's going to happen tomorrow, but if you look over time, you can kind of predict as power and sovereignty have transferred from localities upwards. It went to the federal government, and now it's going to slowly move to global governments. Already our foreign policy is determined by NATO and UN. Congress doesn't vote on declarations of war anymore. It's NATO tells us, and I don't see how, I don't like to use terms conservative, progressive, because I think all that is obsolete and outdated lingo. But for the people that call themselves conservatives, but also support uh, such type wars, that actually seems the opposite of conservative. That seems to be very, the more militaristic and mean side of progressivism. Not the side of progressivism that says, we're going to improve the world and make it better for everyone uh, in a nice way. This is by force. In many ways, neoconservatives and some extreme progressives are the same. You know, whatever happened to cultural relativism is my point. Granted, that's back from the old days of postmodern thought, and somehow we've supposedly, been able to avoid thinking seriously about Foucault, Derrida, and authors of the poststructuralist trend by lumping them in with some. And yes, a lot of the postmodernism was just complete silly nonsense. But by lumping them in with that, we've just managed to write it all off. But cultural relativism was a big part of that, and not just as a goal, but as a methodological concern. At least in like sociology, anthropology, you got to remember that your own culture has a bias and whatnot and all that. But at any rate, it's moved on beyond that. Now, the federal government is not enough to enforce disciplinary power. We want it to come even higher. We don't want people in Canada or some other nation to do something we don't want them to do. So while it's not going to be really like a big global dictatorship type situation, which some people suggest in conspiracy circles, and it's not a hidden one either. It's just the result of certain treaties and whatnot. That type of normative power doesn't really have a face the way we think of it back in like modern terms. It's destructuralized, hence poststructuralism. When you're looking at that, but it's still a disciplinary society, and we are well on our way to becoming a united disciplinary state. And it's just disgusting to me, anyways. I don't, when we live in a time when what someone like Ron Paul, at his very base, is saying individual rights, individual liberties trumps all. When did that become crazy? When did that become too extreme? When did that become out there? When did the idea that you can do whatever you want so long as you don't harm other people get replaced by you've got to do what you ought to do even if it requires harming people, which seems to be the way we approach liberty now. We're all like the Nazi underlings following orders. Maybe we're setting up our future excuse, but at any rate, it's just wildly out of control. The court system, going back to the whole Casey Anthony thing, which is, I can't believe HLN and CNN and those people are still talking about this. For some reason, we believe that a media news outlet is more accurate in determining someone's guilt or innocence than the court system. And yeah, the court system's flawed for sure. But it's usually not flawed in the letting people off the hook manner. It's usually flawed in the opposite direction, But back to this whole situation where the DEA can bust up states' rights. They really if I were, an official in those state governments, I would push to not have state law enforcement help in breaking state law. Not only that, but I would not provide the DEA thugs that bust in there to bust legitimate businesses that are often small businesses any type of protection. They're in there to ignore state law. Ergo, there's no need to give them protection under the state law. If those business owners want to defend their business with their Second Amendment rights, if I was a state official, I'd be fine with that. If not, it needs to go further and have state law enforcement protect the businesses from the federal thugs. And on that note, it's not like it really matters anyway with the NDAA 2012. The federal government can do whatever it wants to American citizens, basically. And no matter if you write a little note when you sign that into law saying, I have reservations about this, you still signed it into law. And all this bipartisanship that everyone says we need more of, that was a bipartisan law. So it seems like everyone wants everyone to come together to make sure that everyone else is not doing what we don't want them to do.